Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. I'm back. We had some technical problems a half an hour ago, but I think I have them ironed out finally. So we are now broadcasting on Rumble and some other platforms. Please like, share, subscribe since we're on the subject. If you haven't subscribed over on Rumble, please consider doing that. Move on over there, even though it's frustrating sometimes to get the thing working properly. It's a bit of a chore, but they are a free speech platform, or more free speech than YouTube, Facebook. So we are gaining ground over there, and we're grateful that we have that as a safe home for our broadcast. So please consider subscribing on our 2 Rumble channels. We also have the feed going out to YouTube on our secondary channel. If you are inclined, please subscribe there. And like, share, subscribe, blah, 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 all that stuff. Share on Facebook. We're on our Facebook pages as well, and Twitter tonight. So, appreciate you guys hanging out here tonight. A lot of stuff to kind of cover, but the main thing we're going to talk about tonight is this embarrassment, this blunder in Parliament with this actual Nazi veteran who has been living in Canada for a long time, since World War II, Yaroslav Hunka, being honored. They paid tribute to the guy in the House of Commons in Parliament. Friday. Was it Friday? Yeah. Can't keep my days straight. Anyway, that was when Zelensky came to pay a visit to Canada with his hands out begging for money and weapons. So, of course, it's blown up into this huge scandal, controversy. So I want to talk about it, because it is so serious. And I'll say right up front that Justin Trudeau needs to resign. And then some other things need to happen. I don't think that they are going to happen, not in the way that I think they should happen. But I don't think he will resign, but he should immediately. He needs to go. And so before we get into the other stuff, let me just preface everything I'm about to say with this. Every day I go out and, I talk about walking my dog, and it clears my mind. And I see the real world. I see my neighborhood, my neighbors, and I just see people. And, on these quiet streets that I live on. Not every place is like this in the country, but I see kids on their way to school in the morning, and I see them coming home in the afternoon. I see the school buses. I walk by, walking my dog. I see the kids walking. I say hello. They say hello back. My kids are grown. That's reality. That's people. Those kids, they're not communists, they're not fascists, they're not conservatives or liberals, they're not any of those things. They're kids. And then they learn what they learn, and they slowly become things as they approach adulthood. And we could turn them into anything we want, really. but they're just people. And when I meet people on the street around here, there are people of all kinds of different backgrounds, all different nationalities, cultures. They've come from all over the world in my neighborhood. We have a lot more Muslims moving into this area. The neighbor a couple doors down, we're good friends. He's got a young family. I see him out with his kids all the time. That's what people do. And when I speak to people in China that I know, when I converse with them online, they talk about their kids. And when I speak to people in Russia, they talk about going to the fast food restaurants. We talk about, well, what's McDonald's like now that it's not McDonald's anymore? And I see more similarities between all of these countries, Russia, China, what goes on here. When I talk to my friends down in the United States, it's all so similar because it's all people. And yes, government has different approaches and policies and taxes and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But it's people. And people have different cultures and backgrounds and different views on politics, and all of that is true. But it's kids walking to school. It's kids just having fun, hanging out with their friends, growing, living their lives, making the most of what they have. And I see the future right there in front of me. Then I see the adults who are running our country. And they're lunatics. Corrupted by money and power. Twisted in the mind over the years with propaganda and political ideology. Firm in their beliefs, rigid in their ideologies, and growing increasingly intolerant. And because of them, I honestly don't recognize the country that I have grown to love so much. Not when I look at them, not when I look at what they do, not when I look at what they do to us, the people. I don't recognize it. And I said when Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, I said that was the moment, right there, that Canada, as I have known it, that was the moment it died. But I want it back. I so want it back. And the system is there. It's just being abused. It's been trampled upon. And as I've said many times, because it has been abused, and Trudeau has shown how easily things can change because of the system, he's shown that the system actually works. Very few people will see it that way, but it's true. He got elected, and in a very short time, he finished a job that, some other politicians have, primed the country for. But he's the one who did it. He really took a sledgehammer to things. Things can change because of the system. But Rick, our votes don't count. It doesn't matter anymore. Yes, they do, folks. Yes, they do. You're damn right they do. They matter now more than ever. We have to do that because the alternative is the extremes with no democracy. And then it's not a matter of your vote not counting, it's that you don't get one. Do you understand? The people who are sitting there telling you that your vote doesn't count, that the system is busted, so why bother? Have you taken the time to ask them what they want to replace it with? It sure as hell isn't democracy in my view. Better be damn careful. Damn careful. And this incident in Parliament, it has taken us another step closer to the destruction of this country, courtesy of the failed leadership of Justin Trudeau, or maybe the effective leadership. It depends on your point of view and whether you think that he's trying to do good by the country or bad. Either way, he's presiding over the demise of Canada. And he has to go. And his Liberal Party and the NDP that supports him, they need to be held accountable too, with your votes. Because the alternative is unacceptable. Do you hear what I'm saying? Unacceptable. Because I love Canada. The world was a better place because of Canada. And it can be a better place still because of Canada, because the foundation is still there. All the inner workings are still there. But Rick, colonialism, blah, 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 blah. I just told you, every country that I have ever visited, where I talk to people, it's all so similar. A country is ultimately its people, but the people don't always have the power. Sometimes, in most cases, countries are sort of dominated by authoritarians, politicians, or dictators. The Canada I grew up in had elements of that, but it was never really like that. It was not a communist country. It was not a fascist country. It was something unique, different, just like the United States. An experiment. It still is. We've just entered a new chapter. And we have a choice as a nation, as the people of this nation. What do we want for the future? Do we want this country? I tire of these people who continuously claim that they want to save Canada, yet never have one damn positive thing to say about it, and do nothing but tear it down. To some degree, I feel I have been guilty of that myself, but my criticism of this country is not directed at the country. It has always been directed at the government, and specifically the government we have in charge right now, Justin Trudeau and his Liberals, and the supporting NDP. And the Conservatives have a lot of things to be held accountable for too. They locked us down. They voted for it. Unacceptable. And then this incident with the Nazi in Parliament. It feels to me almost like a trap that they fell into. I just don't know. The stupidity is off the charts. Embarrassing, you bet. But you know what? The people of Canada, I'm sorry, for overall, The vast, vast, vast majority of Canadians are not fascists. Oh, there are some. You'll find them in every country. Maybe some more than others. And did we bring some here after World War II? Yes, we did. It's acknowledged. And I'll speak to that more later in the broadcast. But I'll be damned if I'm going to take a stake at this moment in history and drive it through the heart of the country that I love. No damn way. Mm-mm. The system is set up to self-correct, folks. Yeah. But you have to be patient and vigilant, peaceful, and democratic. You need to give it a little bit of time. As bad as things are, the system still protects us. As bad as things are, the system can still be improved. The problems with it can be fixed, and it'll be a far sight easier to fix the problems than it will be to tear it all down and build something completely new. And even if it's not easier, it'll be a lot less bloody. Because the alternative is just that, and it's unacceptable. Mark my words. You want the alternative? It pretty much almost has to go down that road. I'll put it to you tonight that the vast majority of Canadians do not want that. But we're being manipulated through an information warfare campaign where we are being bombarded from various sides to manipulate everyone involved in order to try to get us to take action and do things that we ought not do. An information warfare campaign designed to make us hate our own country and hate each other. And that's not Canada. And that's another reason I do not recognize this country anymore. Because people are being sucked into this. I feel alone. I feel alone here. I know that there are more of you out there, and I'm not looking in the chat right now, but I know there are more of you out there. And I beg of you, come stand with me. Tonight, just before I came on the air, I won't tell you which Maverick sent me this, but a question was asked of me. So, Sir Rick, who is our enemy? In Canada? Is it in Canada? Is it Russia? Ukraine? USA? Us? Or all of them? Please keep me informed. That's because of the information warfare campaign. That's because of where it has taken us. And because many of us are being led around by the nose by false prophets, political snake oil salesmen who pretend to have solutions and are trying to lead many people down the garden path saying they have the solution. They're going to save Canada. When in fact, all they want to do is tear it down. Among them, our Prime Minister. For sure. Canada is the world's first post-nation state. Canada has no cultural identity. What the hell is that? I'll tell you this. I refuse to hold the Canadian people as a whole accountable for the actions of our Trudeau regime government. Canadians don't want him and they don't want what we've been handed. I've seen people today, and overnight, yesterday, actually heaping some of this blame for this incident in Parliament with this Nazi, in a way, on the Canadian people. But you know what? And you could say, well, they voted for it. No, we didn't. We never voted for that. Canadians did not know that we would be going to war in Ukraine and sending money to actual Nazis over there. Oh, and don't come to me and say, but why didn't you speak up? I sure as hell did. From before the beginning. It's all on record. But I understood, and I still do understand why other Canadians didn't, because they didn't know. And they were told that there were no Nazis in Ukraine. And so many Canadians, in so many ways, have been failed. They've been let down by the system, the education system, and that's because the government has made sure that they don't know their history. The history of the world, the history of World War II, World War I, their local history. No, they've been too busy indoctrinating generations with cultural Marxism. Woke cultural Marxism. Yeah. I'm not going to join in on beating up the Canadian people, and even though the Canadian people today are beating themselves up, because that's the Canadian way. It's the American way too, to some degree, honestly. But I'm not going to sit here and participate in that, because it's not right. It's not accurate. It's not true. Because Canadians didn't vote for a fascist. They voted for what Lori and a lot of her friends who come on this program with their political views advocate for. They voted for free health care. Okay? And they voted for handouts during the pandemic. Give me free money so I don't starve to death. They did what people always do. They voted for the free shit because they were sold a bill of goods by someone who just wanted power. And so he bought power with the people's money, and he's still doing it. But he's not acting like a Canadian. He's not acting in the best interests of the country, and he has to go. And he should have gone a long time ago. And the Canadian people don't want him. It's pretty clear they don't want him anymore. We don't want him. And it's high time he left. And this scandal, which he's trying to deflect, and actually, he's using the Speaker of the House as a scapegoat. He's responsible. Damn right. His office, they know what's going on. They should. Got to vet all these people coming in before you let them into the House of Commons. You vet them. His office is responsible. And he gets the agenda in advance. He knows what's what. And if it was just a matter of laziness, well, inexcusable. And you've got the Privy Council, and they, people are, oh, the Privy Council, they're so evil. They're not accountable. They're not elected. People don't understand what the Privy Council is. You know what they do? They help with formalities. They help make sure that paperwork is properly executed, that I's are dotted, T's are crossed on legislation. They don't make policy, but that's another story. But they help with events like this as well. But then the PMO's office, they vet everything too, and they should be if they're not, but that's their job. And so it was Justin Trudeau's shindig with Zelensky. But the guy stood up there and gave a speech full of energy. It was like cheerleading, but we're talking about war, man. This is blood money. $650 million additional dollars on top of everything else already spent. $9.6 billion in total. And now another 50 light armored vehicles to be manufactured in London, Ontario, which you'll sell to the public as jobs. Well, to hell with that. Canada was not supposed to be like this. Indeed, it wasn't before, really. I mean, we get rooked into things because we're sitting right next to the U.S., superpower, and that's a whole other discussion. But Canada is supposed to be a peacekeeping nation. That's what we always aspired to, especially after World War II. Or so we were told. And in many respects, our country has been that. And we should be proud of achievements in that regard. But Trudeau, he's a warmonger. Stood up there at that podium and gave this rousing speech. He was excited. You could see the adrenaline pulsing through him when he gave that speech when Zelensky was in town. It was like a freaking, I don't know, man. The warm, firm, semi-manly hugs between the two of those characters. And he was excited about it. It's a campaign, you know. It was like a campaign speech. But you're talking about giving money to this guy so you can go back there and kill Russians. And the Russians on the other side are killing a lot of Ukrainians more. So you're giving this guy money so you can send more Ukrainians, however many are left, after having, 400,000 slaughtered so far? That's nearly 500,000 people killed. Give the money. Give them more. Scum. I don't want 1 penny of my money, not 1 penny of mine going toward any of that. It is obscene. But that's them. That's not my next door neighbor. And yeah, there's somebody down the street who has a Ukrainian flag flying in front of their house. Sometimes they fly a half Canadian, half Ukrainian flag. And I don't like it. But when you're bombarded with information on the internet all the time, and you're lied to, and you think that they're fighting for democracy when they have no democracy there, but you're told that they do, I understand. And so I'm tolerant. And when I see my neighbor who flies the Ukrainian flag, I always say hello. And we don't talk politics. I'd like to. But I say plenty on here. What a freaking joke. But Justin Trudeau is not Canada. And there's real significance to me saying this here before we get into it. I'll be coming back to these points because of the way the rest of the world now perceives Canada because of this atrocity in our parliament. And I understand why people now are seeing Canada maybe a little bit differently But I also take exception to some of the reactions that people are superimposing onto this situation. Well, let's get into, first of all, let's just walk it back a little bit and look at what started this whole darn thing. This is the Speaker of the House. And this is him paying tribute to Yaroslav Hunka, who served in Ukraine with a Nazi-led Ukrainian war unit, the SS Waffen. But it's complicated. It's not cut and dried. It's not simple. Here's the incident that sparked all of this internationally. The world is watching.
Zelensky's speech received at least a dozen standing ovations. There was also one for this man, a 98-year-old Ukrainian Canadian who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians during the Second World War. Zelensky's speech received at least a dozen standing ovations. There was also one for this man, a 98-year-old Ukrainian Canadian who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians during the Second World War.
Yeah. And they say he still supports the troops today. That was what the speaker said when he introduced him. Yeah. And they all stood and applauded like trained seals. You know, and I understand, sort of, but, you know, I can't sit here and make excuses for any of them. Did they know what they were doing? I think some of them are just lazy. Didn't check. Didn't know. Weren't paying attention. Some of them maybe knew. I don't know. We're told that there was no advanced warning. The people will need to decide. You can decide what you think. But today, the Prime Minister, you know, the Speaker of the House has taken full responsibility for this rota. And Justin Trudeau has been quick to accept that apology and use it to deflect blame from himself, heaping it all on the Speaker. Oh, it's not his fault, you see. Sure as hell is. Because it was his party, man. It was like, come to my party, Volodymyr. Ladies and gentlemen, here's my guest of honor, Volodymyr Zelensky. Everybody partay. Okay, well, here's Justin today answering questions about this incident and speaking to the apology from the Speaker of the House.
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened. The speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized. But this is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and, by extension, to all Canadians.
No kidding. But you see what he's done there again? And he does this all the damn time. He deflects the blame for something he's responsible for onto the people. But it's not the people, JT. It's on you, man. It's on you. You're the Prime Minister. You're supposed to be the leader of the country, of your party. You set the tone in the House of Commons. It was your event. You're supposed to make sure you have competent staff overseeing these things. You have many people in places to make sure that all of those people coming in as guests and honorees, dignitaries, that they're properly vetted beforehand. That's your damn job. When you're the captain of the ship, you're responsible for the actions of your crew. It's not the Canadian people, it's you.
I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and
Yeah. Well, when you screw up and do something that embarrasses yourself and by extension the country, but it's your fault, what do you expect your international political opponents to do? They're going to capitalize on it. That's the way the game is played, son. Grow up. It's not Russian disinformation. It's just all countries that are opposed to you. We're at war, man. You took us to war. So these other countries, whether it's Russia, China, India, whatever, wherever we have international political opposition, they're going to stand against you. And when you screw up royally and expose yourself for what you really are, an authoritarian, you're going to get called out. And that's not misinformation. That's just the way it is, son.
Continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine, as we did last week with announcing further measures to stand with Ukraine in Russia's illegal war against it. Je pense que c'est clair que c'est inacceptable que ce soit
the blame
passé.
In two languages.
Le président
One
de la
language is just
Chambre
not
a
enough.
pris responsabilité, s'est excusé, mais
Yeah.
il va sans dire
Excuse.
que c'est profondément
Oops.
gênant pour le Parlement du Canada et par
He's the
extension pour tous les
embarrassment to the
Canadiens.
country.
Je pense
And he has to
particulièrement
go.
aux
He needs to resign.
parlementaires juifs, mais à toute la communauté juive.
This
d'un bout à
has
l'autre
the
de ce
potential
pays
to
qui
completely
commémore,
destroy the country.
Yom Kippur
It truly
aujourd'hui.
does.
L'important dans tout ça, c'est qu'on va
He is
continuer de rester ferme.
So far out of touch with Canadians. He needs to resign. The party needs time to select a new leader, and we need to have an election immediately. That's what needs to happen, because today I've seen all kinds of calls from people on social media saying 338, all 338 of them have to go. Well, that's a clean sweep, folks, of every member of parliament sitting in the House. That's the government gone. And when I say the government, this is the other thing people don't understand. And let me explain this one to you. Because I don't ever hear anybody really getting this aspect of it. They say that it's a uniparty. Yeah, no, it's not. It's a unigovernment. It's not a uniparty. It's a unigovernment. Because what you don't want in a democracy is a complete overthrow and overhaul just because of an election. Each time you elect a new government, they come in and get you a whole new system. The system remains intact. What you have is a change of governing party. And you could have a change in party and new parties can be created. And we've seen that over the years in Canada. The system does work that way. You know, we've seen the Green Party, the Reform Party, even the Communist Party. Okay? And the Conservatives and the Liberals, but it's always the Conservatives and Liberals that have the most support. That's what people vote for. So you end up with this alternating thing back and forth. But Pierre Poilievre, even though he's in opposition, he is in the government. He is His Majesty's royal opposition, which is to say that he is there to serve the government. He is part of the government. He is there and he gets a vote because he represents his constituents in his riding and he gets one vote. Just like Justin Trudeau gets one vote, even though he's the leader of the party. People think that it's like some corrupt thing and these parties, it's all a uniparty, it's all the same thing, and they're all, no, man, they are working for the same government. And If the Conservatives get elected and get to form the government, the Liberals, if they were in opposition, they would still be part of the government. They would then become His Majesty's official or royal opposition party. And they sit there and they criticize. It's their job to criticize and keep in check the party that has the most seats, which then governs the country. But they still get to vote and they get to still have a voice. And that's why our democracy is sort of has worked for over 150 years. Because then, even if your party doesn't form government, your party, if you still have a chance to have some seats and still have a voice, even if your party isn't in power. And even parties that aren't elected, like the PPC, they still have a voice on the political stage. It's just much smaller because they don't have any elected members. But they're still part of the process and they get some media coverage. And with social media, they amplify that. And it could be any number of different parties that are out there. And there are many of them. There's an actual freedom party out there. And there are different parties, at the provincial level and so on. The point is, the system is set up to make sure that everyone does have a voice. Even if your guy or your party doesn't get elected or elect enough people to form the government, you still have a voice. So you're not completely shut out. And that's why the NDP has so much power actually right now, because they have far fewer seats than the Conservatives, but because they're able to prop up the Liberals, they're able to put pressure on the Liberals and pull the Liberals even further to the left in order to get them to proceed with policy that is more in what they want. They get more things that they want because they say, hey, if you do this, we'll give you the support on that. And then everybody's supposed to be happy, except that people aren't, because there are some people over here who are very unhappy because they can't seem to get traction to get to where they want to go. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. And so there are some people who want to throw the whole system away because they can't seem to get their people elected right now. Well, try harder. But the truth of the matter is, Trudeau did get a mandate from the people. He was elected. I didn't like it any more than you, and I don't like what's going on right now. But over time, people do wise up because they see what he's doing. They saw what just happened, and this is really going to hurt him because the people are not fascists. Canada is not a Nazi country, nor is it a communist country. It's Canada. The whole thing is predicated on freedom, or was, until he came along. And yeah, other prime ministers, they've done some stupid, dumb things too that have been an assault, certainly on our sovereignty, because they've bought into this globalist agenda. But that can self-correct too. And as people see all this crap going on, if it's truly affecting their lives, and I'll put it to you that, some of this stuff is true and some of it's been amplified through the information warfare campaign in order to screw with people's minds. But that being said, over time, people will wake up because it's going to hit them in the pocketbook. It's going to affect the future of their children. And people are going to say, screw this. Trudeau's got to go. And we're about at that point, folks. Be patient. Because the alternative is frickin' unacceptable. Do you hear me? Unacceptable. So we better find a damn way to make things work. Now, some people just want to fly the country apart, break it apart. Different people have different ideas of what it's supposed to be. Well, this thing here, that's fueling all of it. It almost, in politics, coincidences, not very common. A lot of things aligning just this week, right? We've even got this other convoy rolling down the highway, coming from who knows where, going to who knows where. If you haven't heard about it, I suspect you're going to in the next few days, or later this next week, or whenever it happens. I don't know. I can't say because it's all kind of under the radar. Because the last convoy was crushed by an authoritarian who refused to come out and talk to the people. And for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Here it comes, down the highway, pal. Right up to your front door, probably. And maybe right up your butt. Okay? Congrats. You reap what you sow. Can't say I'm in favor of some of this crap, but what did you expect would happen when you sent those cops in to beat the protesters? Shouldn't have done that. Dumb idea, the worst thing you could have done. The video is all over the world, showing everyone exactly what you're like, what you are. You exposed yourself right then, the country died. At least the country I remember. And now we're sitting here talking about you paying tribute to a Nazi in Parliament because you took us to war in Ukraine. You gave $9.6 billion to a bunch of frickin' Nazis. And you duped the Canadian people with free shit. Congratulations. When I was making the thumbnail for tonight's program, yeah, I had a picture of Justin Trudeau. And then on the other side, I couldn't decide what to write. And you know what I put at one point? Idiot. I put idiot. Perfect. That's it. But then I didn't do it because you know what? It was like, that's just too easy. It looks too much like clickbait. Anyway, that's a sidebar. So let's go to the House of Commons today. Pierre Poilievre, who also applauded. You know, he'll have some explaining to do. But his office doesn't arrange the damn thing, okay? He doesn't arrange these events. His office doesn't arrange the events. We're told that he didn't even know that this guy was coming. And so, you know, if you listen to the language of the speaker at the time as he introduces this guy, he says, you know, it's all heaped in positivity and praise for initially what appears to be some sort of a war veteran. So, of course, people, you know, I think some of them probably weren't paying attention and they applauded. So I'm not making excuses. I'm just being honest with you. I suspect that's kind of what went on, in part. And here we go. I'll play the speaker first. Here's the speaker introducing this Nazi war veteran from Ukraine. So you can hear what he said. Here it is.
He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. Thank you.
Yeah. That's not the full thing, but that's the highlight. And now he has a problem. He should have known better. He invited him, and he's accepted responsibility. Or so he says he's accepted. So he says that he invited the guy, and he took sole responsibility for it. Took all responsibility for his actions. Justin Trudeau, of course, yeah, it was all his fault. Oh, what a man, JT. Yeah, just let the other guy take the fall. Well, here in the House of Commons, of course, Pierre Poilievre making the most of this today and holding JT accountable, which is true. That's fair. It is JT's fault, ultimately. But not everybody was squeaky clean on this, Pierre. So let's listen to what he had to say.
Oral questions, question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
La nouvelle.
The news that the House of Commons paid homage to a Nazi Waffen-SS officer here at the House of Commons has upset the world and embarrassed Canada. It hampered hindered the victims of the Holocaust and gave a tool of propaganda to Russia. The Prime Minister, and only the Prime Minister, is responsible for the success of international visitors here in Canada. Will he take responsibility for this massive issue that
And he wasn't in the
helped
House
to
today.
cause?
Of course.
The Honourable Government House Leader, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Like every member here in this House, I was extremely disappointed with this situation, and personally, as someone who was a descendant of a Jewish survivor, I was very disappointed, like everyone here. And as the Leader of the Opposition well knows, and as you mentioned, Mr. Speaker, it was your decision and yours alone. Neither the government or the Ukrainian delegation knew about this ahead of time, and it's something that we are all very disappointed by. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The question was for the Prime Minister, because indeed it is the Prime Minister's sole responsibility to guarantee the diplomatic success of major world leaders who come to this country. It is the Prime Minister whose government is responsible for both security and diplomatic vetting of everyone that comes in close proximity of a foreign leader on Canadian soil, particularly a foreign leader who is at war. The government has now admitted that they vetted everyone who was in attendance that day. Will the Prime Minister apologize for having vetted this individual and letting him come anyway?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, like all members of this chamber, I am incredibly disappointed in the fact that this individual was invited, as you yourself, Mr. Speaker, have confirmed by you, was recognized in the gallery. I found out, just like every other member in this House at that time, that this individual was present. This is deeply embarrassing for us as parliamentarians, as Canadians, and it is something that I think all of us take extremely seriously, and I would ask my honourable colleagues not to politicize this moment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is responsible. He is in Ottawa today. He can get on his feet and answer for his massive diplomatic embarrassment and shame.
Stand up.
That minister admitted that the government vetted every single person that was here for the speech. That was the job of the government, which has an entire security and diplomatic apparatus set up for that purpose. Will he finally take responsibility for his latest embarrassment and apologize to Canadians for this massive disaster?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as a descendant of Jewish Holocaust survivors, I am personally very hurt by the fact that this chamber recognized this individual. And I am sure that everyone feels the same way in this chamber. The Parliamentary Protective Service had the appropriate screening in place to ensure the security of last Friday's event, and that is what I was referring to, Mr. Speaker. But what I can continue to say is that we all must take this seriously because it is hurting many communities.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It is the job of the Government of Canada, the Privy Council Office, which is the Prime Minister's personal department, the Prime Minister's security forces in the RCMP, to vet every single person that comes within proximity of a high-profile foreign war leader who is involved in a very difficult conflict right now. It was the job of the Prime Minister to protect that foreign leader from this massive embarrassment. If the Prime Minister failed to have vetting in place, then that in itself is a massive act of incompetence. Will he take responsibility and apologize for that?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I would again ask the Leader of the Opposition to not politicize this issue. He knows just as well as everyone else in this chamber that the decision to invite this individual was yours, Mr. Speaker, and yours alone. You did not inform the government or the Ukrainian delegation that you were inviting him or that you would recognize him. You made that public yesterday. The Leader of the Opposition knows that, and I would ask that he sticks to the facts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, very good.
Leader of the Opposition.
Well, if the Prime Minister is so proud of how he conducted himself, he would be on the floor in the House of Commons today and answer my question. Instead of hiding under a rock. Canadians are sick and tired of a Prime Minister.
Honourable members, that the presence in the gallery, all MPs have duties in the chamber and outside. I just want to remind them that referring to their presence or absence is not allowed in the rules. The Honourable Opposition Leader, please continue.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are sick and tired of a Prime Minister who never takes responsibilities for the things that happen under his watch, whether it's the record high inflation or interest rates or the doubling of housing costs or the constant international embarrassments. He always finds someone else to throw under the bus. Are you that person?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I know the Leader of the Opposition doesn't want to rely on the facts, but the facts in this situation are that the government had no prior knowledge that this individual was being invited, nor that he would be recognized. And if they go back and recall what happened on Friday, they will see that it was indeed the Speaker of the House that recognized this individual. We were all caught off guard. It's deeply embarrassing to this Parliament, but to Canada, and I ask that we all deal with this responsibly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, there are serious consequences to what happened in this chamber Friday. The world's media are talking about it, and already the Russian media is using this to spread propaganda. In a war, this kind of propaganda can encourage the recruitment of Russian soldiers to go to the front against Ukraine. An event like this can harm the search for international support. It's dramatic because we're in the world of war and the repercussions are real. What does the government intend to do to repair the damage caused by Friday's event? The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. As I said, this incident is very painful for everyone here in this chamber, and of course for all Canadians, particularly Canadians who have families that were affected by the Holocaust, namely Jewish communities and those in Eastern Europe. This is something that is very painful, and it was really something that I was personally disappointed by, and I would ask everyone to work responsibly. Thank you. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about the harmful effects of this effect for the Ukrainian war effort, but we mustn't forget our fellow citizens of Jewish faith and all those who were victims of the Nazis during World War II. If there are still executioners alive and there are still victims, our thoughts go out to them. We must show that this House and this government do not take Friday's event lightly for all those affected in one way or another. What will the government do to repair this tragic blunder? The Honourable Government House Leader. As I said, everyone in this House is deeply hurt by what took place last Friday. We were all taken by surprise, and it's something that it was totally unacceptable. There are communities across Canada, Jewish communities, and Eastern European communities for whom Holocaust and World War II were particularly painful. As a descendant of a Holocaust survivor, something I take very seriously, and I think this is time for everyone to reflect.
East.
What happened last Friday never should have happened. Now, turning to another crisis. The last 30 years has demonstrated that successive Liberal and Conservative governments' market-driven approach.
All right, enough of that. And then you have the NDP member there stepping up and doing what I was just talking about. trying to offer people free crap with their own money. Again, taking us down the socialist path, which is what got us into trouble to begin with, honestly, in my view. But I can't blame people. They're offered free. If you make a road, people will drive on it. Fair enough. Let's take a break. We'll continue with this when we come back. Do not touch that dial. More right after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Boy, things get complicated pretty quick in the world of politics, especially when something like this happens. And it can test friendships, such is the case with something I'm about to show you right now. I don't think it's going to harm a friendship, but this is a friendly disagreement on a point of view. And this is from Lori. And I bring this up because that MP mentioned the world looking at what is going on in Canada. And this shows you how much damage this has done. But as I said, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon and start beating the crap out of the whole country. I understand why she is taking this position and doing this, but I have to say I disagree with this. And the reason I draw attention to it is because Lori is on the program and many of you look at this, and I just want to make it very clear that I do not support this position. This is also nothing that I would ever display myself in this context. This is not Canada. She's not Canadian. And that's not Canada. I take exception to it. I disagree with it. I disavow it. I also don't really agree with the message because I think it's kind of an incitement to something. If you're truly, hey Canadians, if you're truly unhappy to see your country's leaders honoring and protecting actual World War II era Nazis, then stand up in capital letters shouting and oppose these fascists with all your might. Well, you can take that in many ways. And given what I know is, what the mood is out there right now, I really don't think it's helpful. You've been awfully quiet about Canada's Ukrainian Nazi problem for the last 75 years, she says. Okay. Well, there is a pocket of a Ukrainian community, and I would not call them all Nazis. And Canada is not a country made up of a bunch of Nazis. We might have a fascist for a prime minister, but that's, like I said, people didn't vote for that. They voted for free health care, which is something that, Lori believes in. And to a degree, I think that we should have something like that too, but that's another discussion for another day. What I don't like that. Criticize the politicians, criticize the people responsible, criticize the governing elites for what they're doing. Criticize the warmonger. Hold him accountable. Get him out of office. Many people are trying. But you can't paint all Canadians with that brush. And I sure as hell won't sit here and let someone capture my country's flag. Some people don't like Nazis. Some people get kind of maniacal about it. Some people take it to an extreme. What do you do with a bunch of Nazi soldiers after a war ends? They're people, humans. They're soldiers. What do you do with a soldier on any losing side of a conflict when the war is over? Well, we had the Nuremberg trials, right? So you round up the ones who are actually in charge, who are ultimately responsible for the decisions made and the orders given. And you hold them accountable and you execute some of them, I guess, which is what happened. Put others in jail and make them serve sentences. If some of them escape and flee to other countries and they're found later, then yes, you have trials for them. And if found guilty of war crimes, then you punish them based on the rule of law and precedent. And that has been done. Not always. Some have managed to escape justice. But what do you do with soldiers? Well, at the end of the war, they went back to regular lives. Soldiers, just because you put on a uniform, doesn't mean you got to make the decisions. And soldiers follow orders. That's why after a war, generally, you let them go back to living their lives like regular people. Otherwise, when does the killing stop? You have to find a path forward, somehow, some way, sometime. I don't want any more killing. Do I want Yaroslav Hunka held accountable for his actions? If he's guilty of war crimes, yes. But he is entitled to the presumption of innocence, like everyone else, and to due process in this country. So if somebody wants to string him up, they'll have to take him to court. And that might happen now that he has been exposed. Thing is, it's not new information. I don't know what he did or didn't do during the Second World War. Was he guilty of any kind of a war crime? I could not tell you. For all I know, the guy sat there and trimmed his nails because he was on guard duty someplace outside a shed. On the other end of the spectrum, he could have been responsible for all kinds of atrocities. I have no flippin' idea, but I do know that he could be dealt with in court if there is justification for charges being laid. And I'll guarantee you now, they'll be looking hard. I've covered stuff like that in the past. And we have, held people accountable in Canada. And in some cases, old Nazi officers sold, rooted out, and then hauled into court near the end of their life, having escaped justice for many, many years. Sometimes they manage to escape it at the very end too, because they were so frail that the court decided that they were too sick to even stand trial. That has happened a number of times. Is it an excuse by the Canadian government? Possibly. In some cases, yes. But where does the killing stop? And in this country, we wouldn't execute them anyway, because that isn't what we do here anymore. In my hometown, we used to have public hangings down by the Thames River, long before I was born, but we got over that because the killing had to stop. So when I grew up, it was a different time, a bright era, and I am so privileged to have lived in those times as a kid, because we didn't have public hangings down by the river. In fact, we didn't have capital punishment. And I thank God that we didn't, because that is brutal and barbaric. Put them in jail. That too is a discussion for another day. But it certainly relates to what we're talking about here tonight. That flag. I'm proud of the Canadian flag. I'm not so proud of our Prime Minister. But the flag is not Justin Trudeau, and that doesn't belong to JT. That flag is a flag of the people. Always has been. It always has been. Don't believe me? Look it up. I'll tell you. That flag was literally the result of a design contest by the people. A lot of people, it was controversial at the time. Lester Pearson, Prime Minister at the time, Liberal. A lot of people didn't want it. But we went down that path and we got ourselves a new flag, because even though Canada is, portrayed as a colonialist, a colonial country that is just an extension of Britain, and people say, oh, it's not even a real country. You know what? Country has always been searching for its own identity and has been struggling to gain its own sovereignty. And it did in 1982 with the patriation of the Constitution. And that flag, it represents so much. That flag represents sacrifice. To me, the red in that flag represents the blood of Canadians. Not Justin Trudeau, not any particular governing body, not the government, the people. It represents the people. And the people of Canada come in all different sizes and shapes, man. And from all walks of life, and from all corners of the world. So let's explore this story behind the Canadian flag. The maple leaf. It's an iconic emblem, and it's not just a symbol of Canada, but it carries deep meanings of sacrifice and freedom for all. To understand the significance of the Canadian flag, you first have to turn back the pages of time. Before 1965, Canada did not have an official flag. The red ensign, featuring the Union Jack and the Canadian coat of arms, was predominantly used. However, as Canada grew and evolved as a nation, a desire for a unique symbol emerged. It was in the early 1960s that the quest for a distinctive flag gained momentum. So then Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson, he believed that Canada needed a symbol that represented the nation's unity and independence as a unique sovereign nation state. The search for this symbol led to the creation of the iconic maple leaf. The debate over the design of the flag was intense back then and passionate. I remember My uncle was like so staunchly against the flag, and people who thought like him called it Pearson's diaper. Numerous proposals were put forward at the time, but it was the single unifying vision of George F.G. Stanley and John Matheson that won the day. Their simple yet profound idea was to feature the red maple leaf, a symbol deeply rooted in Canada's history, culture, nature. And then, on February 15th, 1965, Canada's new flag was officially raised for the first time on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. The red maple leaf set against a white background with two red borders became the embodiment of Canada's identity. Justin, Canada does have unique culture, many unique cultures, making up a larger country that's very unique, with regions of different cultures. Now let's explore why the Canadian flag is often seen as a symbol of sacrifice. Canada's history is deeply intertwined with military conflicts, and the maple leaf has been there through it all. During World War I and World War II, Canadian soldiers fought valiantly under the red ensign, forging a legacy of sacrifice and courage. When the maple leaf became the official flag, it was a solemn reminder of those who had given their lives for the cause of freedom. Fighting against fascism, fighting against the Nazis. The red, the blood red in that flag represents the sacrifice of real Canadians in the struggle against fascism and authoritarianism, and yes, at times, even communism, in various parts of the world, and against dictatorships. And yes, mistakes have been made. But governments led by incompetent fools and sometimes power-hungry, corrupt politicians. But overall, Canada, I think, has made the world a better place. And as we reflect on the maple leaf's role as a symbol of freedom, it's essential to remember that it represents not just the sacrifices made in conflict, but also the ideals of Canada that Canada holds so dear. The maple leaf stands for freedom of expression, diversity and inclusivity, and those are kind of woke terms these days. And I would say that JT gets it wrong every time when he says diversity is our strength. No, it isn't. Diversity is our challenge. Our strengths come from various corners, and in various ways. But diversity is our challenge, especially now, because our country has been so tolerant and so welcoming to people from all over the world. I don't think you can find a country anywhere on this planet that has done more in terms of welcoming people in times of crisis. Refugees, people fleeing war-torn areas, and we've taken them in. Because it's what Canadians do. 9/11. Planes stuck in the air, no place to land. Canada took them in. Planes landing in places like Gander, Newfoundland. And we took in our American brothers and sisters in a time of need. And the people in Gander took people right into their homes, total strangers, and made friends for life. And people said it was Ganderful. That's Canada. That's not Justin Trudeau. Canada's commitment to peacekeeping missions worldwide, and its welcoming stance toward newcomers. That flag has become a powerful emblem of unity in a country celebrated for its, its multiculturalism. But as I say, that's actually our challenge. And yet we rise to that challenge every single day when I walk around the block and I see people from all walks of life. And you know what we don't do? We don't kill each other. At least not yet. But I'll tell you this. With the way things are right now, because of the Prime Minister and because of other forces, but I'll put the blame primarily on him because of his failure in leadership, we have people who just want to tear it all down. Everybody wants to tear it down. That's not an answer. Do you know what's going to happen? Right now, I walk around the block. Everything is cool. Those kids going to school, they're safe. But you tell people to rise up and use all your might to oppose those fascists at a time when people are already jacked right up. And I fear what we will end up with. A lot of things could cause a population to pop off. I don't want a civil war. Tomorrow when I wake up, I want to make sure those kids get to school safe. And I want to make sure they get home safe. And I want to make sure that they live long enough to raise a family, so that they have kids who can go to school in this same damn neighborhood. That's what I want. And I want the war in Ukraine to end. It was a war that never should have started, so I'm opposed to it. But when it ends, I don't want to line up a bunch of soldiers on the losing side and shoot them all in the head either. Because the killing has to stop. The mania has to stop. Stop. And Lori, I love you. And yeah, I know you hate Nazis. And there are many other people out there. Same thing. And everybody is piling on to rip this country apart tonight in one way or another. So it seems, a lot of people. Politicians, yes. The country, no. The people, no. They're just trying to live, just trying to get by. Because the alternative is freaking unacceptable. It's a win. Take the win. But especially in times of war, when you get a win, it's also important to be gracious about it. There's nothing worse than a sore loser than an ungracious winner. And if you take it too far, you take it too far. I won't participate in that. I don't want a war here. I want the war to end over there, and I want no war here. I don't want a civil war here. I don't want an insurrection. I don't want any of that. There are other ways to solve problems, and we can, and we will, and we should, and we will. Everything else, cool. That flag. I don't want it burned. I don't want it trampled on. I don't want it desecrated with swastikas. People are free to express themselves in any manner they wish. That's the beauty of free speech. She has a growing voice, and I love Lori. I love you guys too, and I love my country. For me, it's just too much. I'll sit here and I will rise up against fascism. I'll rise up against authoritarianism of all kinds, regardless of whatever label you want to stick on it. And we've had programs on here talking about communism, and I think communism even comes in different shades, different variations. And I find some of it's, you can have a conversation and there's middle ground to be met. And then there's some of it that, some of this left-wing stuff, it gets too woke for me, way too woke. Again, therein lies a big part of our problem here. But the flag, especially the Canadian flag, the American flag too, the Canadian flag, man, I'm proud of that thing. It represents the people, and it seems everybody wants to capture the damn thing right now. That's an act of war too. That's why people sometimes can't articulate what I'm expressing to you tonight in the same way that I am. They know that there's maybe something wrong, but they can't quite put their finger on it. Well, this is why. It's because the flag has been captured and replaced, in some cases, with like the pride flag. So here's JT, marching in a pride parade, and that flag has been raised on Parliament Hill and outside government buildings, and they even put it outside the Prime Minister's office this past year during Pride Month. So instead of the Canadian flags, they replaced the Canadian flags outside the Prime Minister's office with pride flags. That's capture. That's political capture. You know what you do when you go to war and you capture an enemy's hill? You run up to the top of the hill and you plant your flag. That's why people were marching in the streets this past week. In the Million March for Children. As an extension of their other reasons, got to save the children. It's because even though they may be not expressing it like I am, the Canadian flag was captured. It's been replaced with the pride flag. They see the assault on Canadian sovereignty. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. What the hell's going on? This isn't Canada. I want my Canada back. And they get upset. They took to the streets, man. What did you expect, Justin, when you take the Canadian flag away and put the pride flag there? And Lori, what did you expect me to do? I'm a Canadian, man. Like, you took a symbol of the people, not Justin Trudeau, and did that. And I don't think you made it, but you shared it. And then, okay, so I'm just explaining to you why I get upset about it. We need that if we're going to get back. Gotta have it. That's why these folks, too, who say they want to save Canada, when they're driving around and they've got those Canadian flags, like, I believe that they really do. Unfortunately, in many cases, they're following people who have no intention of saving the damn country at all. They really just want to rip it apart, rip it down, tear it down. That post just adds fuel to their fire. And other posts like it. Not to single you out, I do it just because you're part of what we do here and you're an integral part. And it hurts my heart. It makes me sick to my stomach. Because it makes me lose hope. And if that's the intention, I really disagree with it. And you've been hammering and pushing hard on this one. Harder than anything yet, as far as I've seen. I get it. I know what's going on. I know the score. But there's a line that I can't cross. And I won't. I'll stand for this country, not in opposition to it. I'll stand for it, to conserve it, preserve it, restore it. Because the alternative is unacceptable. Because I want those kids to get to school tomorrow. And I want the kids in Ukraine to get to school tomorrow. And I want the kids in Russia to get to school tomorrow. And that person who sent me the message, who's our enemy, Rick? It's the wrong question. I mean, it's the right question, but I'm not going to give you the answer that you think I'm going to give you. The answer is we have to stop thinking about it like we have enemies. Because the killing has to stop. Instead of looking at somebody else or some other country as like they're an enemy, just got to look at them like maybe a friend or an entity, whatever. We just need to engage and build. These conflicts don't have to happen. And I hear people say, well, I know my history. Well, a lot of these people who say they know their history and they embrace the history so much that it's not just that if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? Well, I see a lot of people who do know their history and they're determined to frickin' repeat it. I'm not there. You know what I think we should do? I think we take all the frickin' fascism and take all the frickin' communism, all the extremism, and throw it into the freaking trash heap. It doesn't really apply so much anymore either, but people are so determined to look at things in black and white because that's the way people kind of think of things, up or down, left or right, right versus wrong, black versus white. No, it's all shades of gray. Take all that crap, chuck it. Stop looking at other people and other countries as an enemy and start working for peace. Start working with people, other countries, to build things. Got to do it. Now more than ever. Because the killing has to stop. Stay with me. I'll be back right after this.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
And now Conservative MP, Member of Parliament Michelle Rumpel-Gardiner, prominent Conservative, prominent politician in the country. Slightly different take on what's happened with all of this. I want to bring this up and play this for you tonight. She'll give you a little bit different perspective on it, just a little bit, and I think it's valuable after listening to what she had to say, so let's listen in.
This is a video I never thought I was going to have to make. This is a video I never thought I was going to have to make, but here we are. So many of you have been writing my office, and I know there's been a lot of commentary today about a very serious incident that happened in the House of Commons on Friday. And for those of you who haven't been following, what happened was and I'm going to read exactly what it was to be precise in language, a veteran of a division of the SS, a Nazi division, a 98-year-old man was invited to the House of Commons to listen to the Ukrainian president address the House of Commons, and then was subsequently recognized by the Speaker of the House of Commons and applauded. This is really serious. It's egregious. The leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, issued a pretty strongly worded statement about this later today. But I just want to give you some brief information about what happens here and what I think happened here, and clear up some misconceptions as well too. First of all, for Justin Trudeau to say that his government had no idea about this, that's just ridiculous. So there's a division within the government called the Privy Council Office. It deals with matters of protocol for state visits like this. The Prime Minister's office would be directly involved in planning every step of this a day event. To suggest that the PCO, the protocol office, and the Justin Trudeau's office weren't going to be aware that this individual was both invited and going to be recognized on the floor of the House of Commons while the Ukrainian president was there that's patently ridiculous. Like, actually think about that for a second. Like, they're expecting you to believe that somehow this was accidental and that it was the Speaker of the House of Commons' fault. Like, this is what Justin Trudeau always tries to do, is to shirk the blame and blame somebody else. You'll see, and I'm going to get to this in a second, he's actually sending out some of his senior members of his cabinet to say that we shouldn't politicize this issue. So that happened to me. I made this exact statement on another social media platform earlier today, and the leader in the House of Commons for the government, Karina Golds, she quote tweeted me and said that we shouldn't be politicizing this. Meanwhile, she had deleted a picture of her with this individual that she had posted to her Instagram. And the government sent her out to communicate that, like, they had no knowledge of this. It just, I don't take any joy in this situation, because this has really serious global ramifications. This isn't just a minor oopsie. This is a big, egregious lapse of judgment that should never have happened and cast Canada, our entire country, in a really negative light, and there needs to be consequences. So Justin Trudeau can't shirk this. Now, how does something like this play out in the House of Commons? Because I know some of you have been asking about this. So I found out, that typically what will happen, like the Trudeau Liberal government, they don't give opposition parties heads up about these speeches very far in advance. So I, as a Conservative member, I actually only found out about the speech very late in the week. I think it was like late on Wednesday, I sort of found out about it, that it was actually going on. I had events scheduled in my riding on Friday, and I couldn't change my plans at that short of notice. So I actually wasn't there. So I didn't witness this happen. But no member of parliament, certainly on the opposition side, if we're not even getting heads up in advance about the speech, we're certainly not getting heads up on who's invited in the gallery from the government. That's just not something that happens. And the Speaker certainly didn't give anybody on our side a heads up that this person was going to be recognized. So it's just further, it's just this egregious lack of judgment. It's just disgusting, and I cannot believe that I'm here having this video that something like this would have happened. And like, again, I just want to reemphasize that if Justin Trudeau is trying to skirt the blame like on this, like he can't. Like this has such huge implications for our country. This isn't like a minor thing. This is there needs to be consequences for this, and the buck stops with him. And again, just if anybody is suggesting to you, or you hear that like, well, the government, like they're trying to spin right now that the government wouldn't be aware of this, that's like think of this is a state visit of a very high profile global leader. To suggest that the Prime Minister's office and the protocol office wouldn't have some knowledge of this, I mean, I don't know what's worse. Like, are they trying to suggest that they like just have no control over like whether or not an alleged Nazi, an actual alleged Nazi, like not somebody that the left calls a Nazi today, like allegedly actually fought with like Hitler's forces, that they would allow this individual into the House of Commons and recognize them? Like, it's just, oh man. So anyway, this is really bad, and it's just another, like, this is not, like, again, I don't take any joy in this, and I'm just talking to you guys to explain kind of how this all unfolded and where my headspace is at. But I want to be very clear that this has really big implications for Canada in terms of our posture on foreign policy, our relationships with other countries. The ambassador to Canada, for example, from Poland, was tweeting tonight that he expected an apology because of this happened. You've got Jewish leaders. This is a very holy day in the Jewish calendar. It's Yom Kippur. You've got Jewish leaders who are in attendance at this event who are saying that they're just absolutely disgusted. Like, this has major implications. It's not a minor thing. This is something. So when you've got liberals saying that this shouldn't be politicized, there needs to be accountability from the government on this, given the magnitude of this. And it's just one more thing in what is now a mountain of scandal and just complete abject loss of the moral authority to govern. So regardless of how you vote, this is not behavior that is becoming of a government that purports to represent our country in any sort of positive way on the world stage. In fact, we're now damaging relationships between other countries. The implications for the situation that the government put the president of Ukraine in that moment are huge. They're potentially very negative and very bad. So the prime minister of our country needs to be held accountable for this, and don't let him try to convince you otherwise, because that's just a lie. Some other sources of information for you to look at. My colleague Jenny Byrne, who was a former chief of staff to Prime Minister, or Deputy Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who would be well acquainted with protocol for state visits like this. She outlined this on her Twitter feed as well too. I will leave it at that. So don't get spun. This will certainly be a topic of conversation for the next couple of days, I'm sure, in the House of Commons. And I hope that the mainstream media, they were late to cover it today. It was actually an independent news outlet that sort of broke the story earlier today. But this does need to be addressed. And consequences need to happen. At the same time, we also have to keep focusing on the fact that Canada is in an incredible cost of living crisis, major issues impacting all of you, and that's what certainly will be focused on as well too. I can't believe I had to do this. I cannot believe I had to do this video. Anyway, getting ready for work tomorrow in Ottawa, working hard for you. Have a great day.
Yeah. You know, the Conservatives, they, when Harper was Prime Minister, they wanted to have a museum dedicated to communist atrocities. The liberals stopped them. You know, I suppose if we're going to go down this road, we better make sure we don't have any communists in the House of Commons either. Certainly, you know, some people would like to talk about Joseph Stalin, too, and the atrocities that he committed. Scum that he was. Because of Stalin, a lot of people in Ukraine starved to death in the 1930s. The Great Famine. So severe because of his policies and his authoritarianism that millions of people starved to death. It was so severe that there is widespread documentation of people resorting to cannibalism to survive. Fact. Look it up. So severe that there are actual documented cases, many of them, where parents killed their own children to eat them. Communism, fascism, authoritarianism. The killing has to stop. Stalin was an asshole. So was Hitler. I don't want either one. I let people say what they want to say. But I'll tell you this, man. You take my damn flag. You destroy my country. You're going to miss it when it's gone. Yeah, I know. I know. It's hard to stomach the thought of a famine so severe that people were actually eating their own children. Documented cases. You want to save the children? Save them from frickin' communism and fascism. Actual documented cases of children being pursued, kidnapped, so that they could be eaten in Ukraine in the 1930s because of Joseph Stalin. And some people portray him as a hero and say that what I'm telling you is a lie, but it isn't. Weaponizing food. Why do you think that they've talked so much about the grain from Ukraine getting out? Under Stalin, grain production was cut dramatically because of the policies he implemented and the collectivization of the economy. State control. Stalin was an asshole. So was Hitler. Tired of them fighting communists and fascists. You don't have to choose one or the other, you know. Canada didn't. But it sure feels like we're being forced into making a choice one way or the other now. Except, see, the funny thing is, feels like maybe it doesn't matter which side we choose right now, we're going to end up with the same damn thing. If we let them tear it all down. Canada's the target, folks. In case you haven't noticed. Canada is what these other countries want. We're the target. We're at war. A different kind of war, but Canada is the target. And the Holodomor is not a lie. It's a fact. It happened. Genocides happen. Human beings are capable of incredible atrocities, horrors. Seems like we don't learn. Seems like these historians are more just determined to make sure that it happens again. Not me. I reject it. I'll listen. I'll pull a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Take the good. Reject the bad. Make something better. Conserve, preserve, restore. Bring it back. What the hell do you think was going on over here when the people came to this country? They came to the promised land, the new world. The new world. To seek freedom. Freedom of from religious oppression. Freedom from endless wars. A new idea, a new experiment. That's what this place was. But we've imported these ideas and we've let it twist things. And now it seems some other people have their eyes on the prize. Kanakistan, Canada. Everybody wants it. They want the resources. They want the land. They want the strategic location right next to the US of A. Can't say I understand everything going on because it's all cloaked. The information war isn't really clear where some stuff comes from. I'm getting to understand how it's working. It's all new. Canada is in the crosshairs. You know, and I sit here and I talk a lot, but I also let other people talk a lot. Some people a lot more than others. And a lot of the time, I bite my tongue in order to make space for other people and their views. I think it's right. And when I interview people, I tend to ask a question and then listen to the answer. It's what I do. But tonight, I've said a bit of what's on my mind because I believe in the people. Not so much in Justin. Him, I'm disappointed in him. Very disappointed. And I'm worried about the future. And I'm worried about what's rolling down the highway. tonight, and I'm worried about what's sitting in Parliament tonight. I don't like any of it. So if I have to stand over here all by myself, I'll stand over here all by myself. I'll stand up for Canada. I'm going to keep on trying to bring it back to what it was and then make it better and fix the damn problems. Because, folks, I want my country back. Justin Trudeau needs to resign. And because so much muck has been spread over Parliament because of this incident with this Nazi, which is abhorrent in itself. I agree with that. And because this war in Ukraine is also grotesque, we need to have an election and let the people speak. And this issue should be front and center. And all of these politicians need to be hauled off, and they need to stand in front of their constituents and their riding associations at the grassroots level, and they need to be questioned. And the people at the grassroots level, the ordinary Canadians, need to review each and every one of them and decide if they are fit to stand for re-election. And then all 338 ridings have an opportunity for a great reset, a democratic reset by the people. And that's fine. And I am looking in the chat and I see what Leo said, and yeah, no issues with that. Truth. About damn time. No issues with it. But it's dangerous. Hold the politicians accountable. Don't destroy the whole country. And don't use it to throw fuel on a fire that's already burning in a way that is meant to blow it all up. Because the result of that, to me, is unacceptable. Because I want those kids to get to school safe tomorrow. I don't want guns in the streets. I don't want tanks rolling down my street. I don't want my neighbors shooting each other. Doesn't have to be like that. But if we keep throwing fuel on this fire, it isn't handled right, that's what we could get very easily. And if that happens, it'll happen in a way that my neighbors won't know what the hell just happened. Because it doesn't take the majority of people to blow it all up. It takes that many people. Can't have it. And when if that goes down, people are going to go, what the hell's going on? And then it'll like overnight, instantly, everything changes. Bing, bang, boom, bam. Suddenly plunged into violence nationwide. People forced to pick a side. I feel like I'm there now, and I don't want to be there now. Protest all you want. But you and I, you all know, there's some people out there who would like to tear it down quickly. And I'm not for that. So, election. Get rid of JT. The liberals have to come clean. And we have to stop this frickin' war in Ukraine. We have no business in there. Never should have been involved to begin with. It's got to stop. The killing has to stop. And not one more dime to Zelensky. Not one dime. Not one penny. Nothing. Cut him off. Sue for peace. The Russians will listen. It's just got to be, man. Put all this politics over there. Peace first. Work the rest of that crap out later. I believe in you guys. Watching stuff online right now, man. Every day, all night. Crazy people. When the dust settles, I'll still be here. I hope you're with me. Standing for freedom. Real freedom. Like real freedom, you know? Real freedom. I had other stuff tonight, but I think that's enough. It's 8:30. Lori, love you. Respect you. Leo. Love you too, man. Choosy, I really love you. If we could just exile those Knights of Malta. We're going to do it. See, man, he's got the right idea. He doesn't want to execute them. He wants to exile them. Right on. Yeah. There you go. Exile the Knights of Malta. Thank you, Mavericks, for spending your night with me. I do love you guys. I want to look forward, don't want to look back anymore. And that's why I'm looking forward to tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be back. On the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.